Hey you guys, it's Britt. Tonight we're here to talk about something pretty specific when it comes to Jodi Hildebrandt and her prior practices as a therapist. I wanted to bring this to you guys so that we could extend the conversation. So if you're interested, please keep watching. All right, you guys, so tonight we have two updates, and they both have to do with Jodi Hildebrandt specifically. The first one is she finally, just a couple days ago, went ahead and surrendered her therapist license to the state of Utah. Now, this, in my opinion, it took far too long. I think that there should be situations where if something like this is unfolding, like, why couldn't her license have been revoked? Why couldn't it have been taken? Why was she given the liberty to wait until she surrendered it instead of the state board being able to step in and revoke it? Now, please keep in mind, when I'm talking about this kind of stuff, I'm not an attorney. I don't work for any kind of law enforcement. I don't have experience in any of this kind of stuff. So I'm simply here to talk about it with you guys as all of us, the public, are finding these things out. But it's a thought that crossed my mind. Why wasn't it revoked? Why was she given the privilege to wait and wait and wait some more and literally wait almost a month from the time that she was arrested to turn in her license? Why did that take so long? This article, which I will link down below as I usually do, it says Jodi Hildebrandt has given up her license to practice counseling in Utah following her arrest as she stands accused of child abuse, according to the state's Division of Professional Licensing. In a news release, the division said that it had obtained a license surrender and limitation for Hildebrandt, who was arrested on August 30th alongside YouTuber Ruby Frankie. Both women were charged of 6 counts, blah, blah, blah. We've already been over that. It says, after Hildebrandt's arrest, the Utah Attorney General's office started working with the division to secure a voluntary surrender of her professional license, according to that release. The surrender is not an admission of guilt, but it ensures she cannot return to work as a licensed counselor if she is released. Hildebrandt, along with her attorney, agreed to the limitation. Given the heinous allegations, the agency felt that the surrender of the license was the best course of action to protect the safety of Hildebrandt's patients and clients, said Margaret Bussey, executive director of the Utah Department of Commerce. She said that in a statement. Depending on what happens with the case, Hildebrandt could permanently have her license removed. She could also try to have it reinstated. According to state records, Hildebrandt obtained a master's degree in educational psychology from the University of Utah in 2003. In 2005, she became licensed. And then it goes over in 2012 how she found the Connections, an online mental health and relationship coaching program. And it also goes over how she told the Mormon church about her client having a corn addiction and basically just outed him to the Mormon church, which is what caused her license to be temporarily suspended. But it was obviously reinstated later on. I think that this is just it's a it is an accommodation that would have not been given to other people. But I think that this, again, speaks to the power, wealth, and privilege of somebody like Jodi Hildebrandt having the pleasure of waiting and waiting some more and going through this negotiation process. Like, revoke her license. She has been shown that, number one, in my what might be an unpopular opinion, I don't think it should have been reinstated after she outed her own patient, breaking HIPAA violations by going to the Mormon church and telling the Mormon church about an addiction that he was facing in his life, that he confided in her. And then she went and just completely not only broke his trust, but also broke HIPAA violations. I mean, it's completely just a complete mess that she was allowed to do what she did for as long as she did. So I wanted to give that update about her license. It's done. The second thing I want to talk about is from the Mormon Stories podcast. A lot of you guys in my other 8 Passengers videos have been mentioning Jesse. Now, I have shared Jesse's podcast episode in other videos in the description box, at least on a couple videos. But I did mention in one video, I'm not going to react to this entire podcast because I would rather you guys hear the podcast for yourself. If you're following this story, listen to Jesse tell their own story. That is not something that I'm going to react to in its entirety. It just doesn't feel like the right thing to do. And if you're following this story, I think that you should hear Jesse tell their story for themselves without me interjecting and sharing a bunch of opinions. That's just what feels right for me personally. There is one part of this podcast episode that I want to share with you guys today. And the reason is because it has to do with the way that Jodi Hildebrandt was allegedly funded by the Mormon Church. And since I'm extending the conversation from Jodi and Ruby to also include how the Mormon Church might have been involved in this to some degree, I felt like this was important. So I want to share this clip with you guys. And I want to say, I do not have any reason to believe that Jesse would be lying or not being truthful in this situation. This is somebody who is obviously a confirmed family member of Jodi's. I think that knowing that Jodi is away and out of the public and hopefully going to be held accountable for the alleged crimes that took place, I think what it did was it allowed Jesse to feel comfortable enough to tell their story on this podcast. I don't think that Jesse is doing this for clout or fame or any of the above. And I, at this point in time, have more reason to believe them than not to believe them. I hope that makes sense. But let's listen to this and then we will move on.
This is crazy thinking about it now. I did her billing and she would bill the church, like every client, essentially. I would say like the vast majority of her clients were from bishop recommendations, just based off of the billing that I would do for her.
Because in the Mormon Church, if somebody can't afford a therapist, tithes and offerings might be used by the bishop who recommends his ward members to Jodi. He would then foot the bill. So the church was funding. So the Mormon Church was funding Jodi Hildebrandt's wealth and success and power.
And the church knew, at least my local ward, Bishop Bangeter knew what was happening. People in the church in my ward started becoming very nervous about what was going on. They were becoming very concerned with just my physical, like what I was looking like in the church. And they went to Bishop Bangeter and voiced their concern about they're like, something is wrong.
So what allegations are being set forth here is that the Mormon Church was funding Jodi Hildebrandt's reckless behavior, abusive things that she was participating in, the hurt and pain that Jesse had to go through as a young adolescent, because Jesse was residing with Jodi. And it breaks my heart to think that this kind of torment and abuse would happen. But at the same time, because of some of the things that have come out, I have major trust issues with churches, whether it's the Mormon Church or a Christian church or whatever. I don't go to church personally. I'm sure most of you guys could tell that by now. But there have just been too many stories of crooked preachers, crooked pastors, people that were not doing anything godly, and they were higher ups in the church. I think that most of us can agree on that. No, I'm not saying every church. No, I'm not saying every preacher or pastor or bishop. Please don't twist my words. But what I am saying is there is a pattern. And anytime there's a pattern, I feel like most people step back and think, okay, maybe my church isn't like that, but I'm also seeing a pattern from other establishments. So it's at least something that should be talked about. And, you know, the churches, no matter what religion they are, money, power, abuse, trauma, just way too many bad things have been happening for years. And it's made a lot of people, deconstruct their faith. And a lot of people don't go to churches because in order to have a relationship with God, a lot of people agree that you don't need to go to church every Sunday to have a meaningful relationship with God. So I don't want to get super anything in this video. I really want to focus on this. But there are several people in the comment section of this video, and they are saying that similar things happened to them. Similar things where they were sent to a therapist by their bishop, and then the things that they told the therapist got back to their bishop. And that is a huge HIPAA violation on top of it just being morally wrong. If you as a licensed counselor or licensed therapist are hearing the pain, the trauma, the heartache, the, lowest and darkest parts of somebody's life, you are not to go to your freaking pastor or bishop and share that information with them. I just don't understand, like, how could you say that you're actually a therapist if you are harming people by interacting with them? Those two don't make any sense to me. And the problem is that according to Utah laws, the clergy are not mandated reporters in the state of Utah. So if they see something like with Jesse, and they saw Jesse looking physically harmed, they are not mandated reporters. And there are things that need to change. There are big changes that need to take place, especially in the state of Utah. And it really makes me extremely concerned as to how many more stories like Jesse or like Adam are we going to hear over the next year, over the next 5 years, over the next extended period of time. Someone left a comment and said, as a ward clerk, I wrote a lot of checks to Jodi for members the bishop recommended to her. Any church that holds secret ceremonies should be looked into. Someone else said, not this specific therapist, but my wife received third-party counseling paid for by the church. Someone else said, the Mormon church terrifies me. I watched LDS Mormon beliefs mix with severe mental illness in my best friend, and it was terrifying to watch. A friend did his medical residency in Salt Lake City. He said there are a lot of Mormon domestic abuse seen in the ER. It's been going on for decades. The church was complicit in ruining the lives of countless children and adults because they had to know Jodi was dangerous. Adam Steed told them. I understand that the religious side of this is triggering and can be a hostile topic for some people, but I don't think that this conversation can be had without acknowledging that there are some major issues that the Mormon church played a role in. I am not saying it's all their fault. I am not saying anything along those lines. But if we're going to talk about the key players, I believe in this situation, the Mormon church is or are one of the key players. And I think that most of us can agree on that. And I'm not saying every single Mormon church because I don't know every single Mormon church. But the area of Utah where Jodi and Ruby and this whole mess, and with Jesse, where all of this was unfolding, that is a problem. And I think if you're following this story, most of us can sit back and say, okay, like, what's really going on here? Because you can't just like wipe them from the slate and say, oh, no, no, none of this is their fault. When we have Jesse confirming that the Mormon Church was directly involved in funding Jodi Hildebrandt's lifestyle, so much to the point where she was able to buy herself a sweet little, what, $2.5 million home out there in Utah. And the entire time she was being crooked, she was abusing people, breaking their trust, breaking HIPAA violations, and directly abusing her niece. I think the whole thing is a hot mess. It's very sad, but I'm going to continue to cover it. So I appreciate you all allowing conversations to be had. I know that they're not easy conversations, but I think that most of us are on the side of, let's talk about this, let's get it all out there. And it's a very, there are just so many layers. There are so many layers to it, but we're going to keep up with it the best that we can. So for now, if you like the video, please leave a like and a comment. And if you'd like to see more from me in the future, please subscribe. I'll see you guys soon. Bye.